In a small town in the countryside where modernity meets nature, exposed brick houses share space with colorful gardens. The murmur of the river that cuts through the town blends with the song of the birds, while the light of the sunset bathes the green hills, creating a serene setting that contrasts sharply with Lucas's spiritual restlessness. Lucas, 30 years old, contemplated the world with inquisitive eyes, carrying a silent loneliness. A staunch atheist, he wore simplicity in his attire and complexity in his thoughts. His restless soul sought answers in books, in scientific theories, but he felt an inexplicable void that no logic could fill. Intelligent and reserved, he hid his inner fragility behind a mask of rationality. Lucas's routine unfolded with mechanical precision, typical of someone seeking to fill the voids of existence through functionality. In the small cafe where he worked as a barista, he prepared coffees with the same meticulousness with which he organized his thoughts. Calculated, systematic, distant. Each cup he served represented more than just a simple service. It was an extension of his own need for control. Customers passed by, exchanged superficial greetings, but rarely penetrated beyond the polite courtesy that Lucas built as an invisible barrier. His loneliness was not merely a state, but a deliberate choice. He preferred the company of scientific and philosophical books to social gatherings where he saw only empty conversations and emotions he deemed irrational. Rationality was his refuge, his shield against any possibility of emotional vulnerability. The few friends he maintained respected his distant demeanor. They talked about abstract topics, intellectual debates, but never about feelings. Lucas navigated this universe as a permanent observer, never as a genuine participant. In his spare hours, he walked around the town, observing nature with an analytical gaze. Trees, rivers, birds. He saw everything as complex systems, never as manifestations of something beyond pure materiality. His connection to the environment was intellectual, never spiritual. His family regarded him as the different son, the one who questioned traditions, who challenged family beliefs with scientific arguments. Christmas, Easter, family gatherings were tense moments of debates, where his skeptical stance caused discomfort among his more traditional relatives. His world was built on pillars of reason, an intellectual castle erected with bricks of scientific and philosophical knowledge. But behind this fortress, something whispered, an inexplicable void that no logical argument could completely silence. Lucas's life unfolded this way, precise, controlled, but profoundly lonely. Unbeknownst to him, he longed for something beyond what his eyes could see and his mind could process, despite vehemently denying that possibility. The news of his mother's sudden death came like thunder tearing through the sky on an apparently calm day. Lucas received the call from his older brother John while preparing the morning coffees in the small establishment where he worked. The world around him seemed to freeze the moment the words, "Mom couldn't make it," echoed in his ears. The initial shock was replaced by an overwhelming wave of complex emotions that Lucas had never experienced before. His mother, Maria, had always been the figure who persistently tried to connect him with the spiritual universe, even in the face of his constant intellectual resistance. Now, she had left without him being able to share his true feelings. In the following hours, Lucas plunged into an emotional turmoil that challenged all his rational constructs. Every memory of his mother seemed to question his atheist principles. How could someone simply cease to exist? What sense was there in a life so short, so fragile? The pain consumed him in a way he had not imagined. It was not just the physical loss, but the void of understanding that tormented him. His scientific theories, his philosophical readings seemed insignificant in the face of death's magnitude. For the first time, Lucas felt the fragility of his own existence. During the wake, he observed family and friends comforting each other through faith. Their prayers, gestures of comfort, their ability to find hope amid sadness left him deeply intrigued. How could they find peace in the midst of loss? His mother's absence created an abyss in his soul. She had always loved him unconditionally, respecting his choices even when she disagreed. Now, this absence screamed louder than any scientific argument. For the first time, Lucas began to question whether his worldview was truly complete. In the days that followed, an inexplicable restlessness consumed him. His certainties began to crumble like sandcastles before the rising tide of emotions. The rationality he so valued seemed insufficient to explain the complexity of human existence. His mother's death would not just be a physical loss, but the beginning of a journey of questioning that would completely transform his understanding of life, death, and spirituality. A path of doubts and discoveries was about to unfold, challenging everything Lucas believed up to that point. With hesitant steps and a heavy heart, Lucas entered the small municipal library that gray afternoon. His eyes, marked by recent sadness, roamed the dusty aisles filled with books, searching for something that could calm the inner turmoil that consumed him since his mother's death. It was then that their eyes met. Mrs. Maria, an elderly woman, with white hair and a serene gaze, was sitting in an armchair near the window. Her movements were slow, but her eyes sparkled with a wisdom that transcended her years. Something in that moment felt different, like an invisible thread connected them instantly. "May I sit?" Lucas asked, breaking the silence with a hoarse voice filled with unexpressed emotions. Mrs. Maria smiled, a smile that carried compassion and understanding. "Of course, young man. It seems you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders." Surprisingly, Lucas felt vulnerable. Unknowingly, he began to share his pain, his loss, his questions about existence and meaning. Mrs. Maria listened, not with pity, but with a profound empathy that went beyond words. "I lost my husband years ago," she revealed, picking up an old book from a small table beside her. "The pain consumed me at first, but I learned that hope is not about not suffering, but about finding light even in darkness." The book she extended to Lucas seemed to hold stories beyond its pages. Its modest title read, "Paths of Faith." Something in that moment felt different, like a subtle energy invited him to look beyond his rational convictions. "Perhaps this book can help you understand that not everything is explained by logic," Mrs. Maria said, her eyes shining with an ancestral wisdom. Lucas held the book, feeling a weight beyond the physical. His hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but of an inexplicable anticipation. That casual encounter seemed to have been orchestrated by a force greater than his understanding. "Why are you giving me this?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "Because sometimes we need a guide to traverse our inner deserts," Mrs. Maria replied, gently touching his hand. In that moment, something within Lucas began to stir. An imperceptible portal was opening, inviting him on a journey of discoveries that would challenge everything he believed until that point. The transformation had begun, silent and profound as a seed germinating beneath the earth, waiting for the right moment to sprout and reveal its full potential. Lucas remained absorbed in his pain when he began to experience phenomena that defied his rational comprehension. On the night following the wake, vivid dreams invaded his sleep, where his mother appeared serene, transmitting an inexplicable peace. In each dreamlike image, she seemed to whisper words of hope, inviting him to look beyond the material, to perceive dimensions his scientific mind had always rejected. The dreams were not merely random fragments, but clear sequences that made him question his limited view of the universe. His mother appeared in heavenly landscapes, dressed in light, smiling with a tranquility that penetrated his rigid soul like a sunbeam, melting ice. In those moments, Lucas felt a sublime connection, a silent call to something greater. He would wake up startled, sweating, but not out of fear. An odd sense of comfort enveloped him, as if an invisible energy embraced him. The dreams brought with them a clarity that his years of scientific study had never provided. There were mysteries beyond human understanding. In the cafe where he worked, he began to notice small signs that had previously gone unnoticed. A book left by a casual customer about spirituality, a conversation about faith between two ladies at the next table, sun rays streaming through the window in an almost magical way. Each detail felt like a subtle invitation to a journey of discoveries. The book that Mrs. Maria had given him awaited on his table. The pages seemed to call for his attention, not with printed words, but with an almost palpable energy. Lucas picked it up hesitantly, feeling that each line could dismantle his old convictions. His internal struggle was intense. The rational side fought against these inexplicable experiences, trying to classify them as products of his imagination, shaken by loss. But something deep within him prevented him from completely dismissing those extraordinary experiences. At that moment, Lucas understood he was faced with a choice: to cling to his scientific certainties or to allow himself to dive into a universe of spiritual possibilities. The proposition was simple yet challenging: to abandon the known and venture into the realm of mystery. The signs multiplied, as if the universe conspired for his transformation. An inexplicable peace began to inhabit his heart, challenging the entire framework of his previous thoughts. Lucas felt he was on the brink of a journey that would forever change his existence. Lucas's journey toward spirituality blossomed like a delicate flower in arid soil. In the local church where he found unexpected acceptance, his first steps were hesitant but filled with genuine curiosity. The compassionate gazes of community members enveloped him with a different energy than he had known in the rational world. In lectures and Bible studies, Lucas observed attentively. Each word about forgiveness, love, and hope penetrated his soul like a healing balm. The stories of personal transformation made him question his old convictions. How did those people find so much peace amid adversity? The internal challenges were constant. His scientific mind battled against each new spiritual concept he discovered. He questioned, argued, but he also listened. He realized that his thirst for knowledge, previously directed only toward logic, was now opening up to a deeper understanding of existence. In discussion circles, Lucas listened to stories of people who had overcome trauma, loss, and despair through faith. Each account touched him differently. Gradually, his intellectual rigidity began to dissolve, revealing a sensitivity long kept hidden. Community members did not pressure him. They welcomed his journey with patience and respect. Pastor Michael, a man of serene wisdom, became his main spiritual mentor. In deep conversations, he helped Lucas deconstruct his previous concepts, not through imposition, but through respectful dialogue. Volunteering in the community was another transformative element, helping low-income families, participating in social projects. Lucas discovered a dimension of love that went beyond theoretical concepts. Practical generosity transformed him, making him realize that the true essence of spirituality lay in serving others. His family, initially skeptical, began to notice subtle changes. The hardness that characterized him gave way to a deeper sensitivity. Heated debates yielded space for more empathetic conversations, where listening replaced the desire to always be right. External criticisms no longer affected him. Old atheist friends questioned him, but Lucas responded calmly, without the need to convince. His transformation was so genuine that it required no arguments. The inner peace he was gaining spoke for itself. Moments of doubt still existed. Nights of reflection made him question his new journey. But unlike in the past, these doubts no longer paralyzed him. They became fuel for growth, not insurmountable obstacles. For Lucas, spirituality ceased to be an abstract concept. It became a living, transformative experience that redefined every aspect of his existence. His journey from atheist to Christian was not a conversion, but an awakening to deeper dimensions of life. The storm was closing in on the small town, its thunder echoing like cries from an internal battle waged in Lucas's heart. The dark night and the cutting lightning seemed to reflect the turbulence of his soul, a conflict between the reason that trapped him and the faith that called him to freedom. Lucas was alone at home, his trembling hands holding the book that Mrs. Maria had given him. Each page was a challenge to his convictions, each word a spark threatening to ignite his atheist thought structure. The storm outside seemed to respond to his internal conflicts, the thunder resonating like an invitation to surrender. Silent tears streamed down his face. For the first time, Lucas allowed himself to be vulnerable. His pain from his mother's loss, his loneliness, his profound doubts exploded in a cry of despair that pierced the tempestuous night. "I need help," he murmured, his voice choked with emotion. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. His intellectual resistance began to dissolve, like mist before the morning sun. Lucas understood that his scientific truths were too limited to explain the complexity of existence. Spirituality was no longer an abstract concept, but a pulsating reality inviting him to a journey of transformation. The prayer that rose from his lips was not elaborate or theologically constructed. It was a sincere cry, a total surrender. "I don't know how to do this, but I need something beyond myself," he whispered, feeling a different energy envelop him. His fears, his doubts, his old convictions seemed to melt away in the face of this genuine surrender. The lightning gradually ceased, as if responding to his yielding. An inexplicable peace began to inhabit his heart. Lucas understood that his transformation would not just be intellectual, but profoundly spiritual. Something new was being born within him, more powerful than any scientific argument, deeper than any theory. That night, Lucas crossed an invisible threshold. He was no longer the intransigent atheist, but a man in search of meaning. open to dimensions that transcend human understanding. His journey of transformation was just beginning, but the first and most important step had already been taken: surrender. The morning light that followed would find him changed. No longer a man torn between reason and emotion, but someone who had discovered the profound harmony between the scientific and the spiritual. Lucas was reborn, not as a denial of his past, but as an expansion of his understanding of life. The epilogue of Lucas's journey revealed a profound and inspiring transformation. Now his life radiated a completely different energy, marked by generosity and spiritual commitment. The young man who once hid behind scientific arguments had become a true agent of change in his community. In the local church, Lucas coordinated social projects to assist low-income families, organizing support groups and solidarity campaigns. His former rationality, once restricted to abstract concepts, now translated into concrete acts of love for others. Each family assisted, each child supported represented for him an extension of his newfound understanding of existence and purpose. The gazes that were once indifferent now shone with hope. His transformation did not go unnoticed. The same residents, who knew him as the skeptical barista, began to recognize him as a community leader, someone capable of connecting people and awakening the best in each one. The small cafe where he had worked for years became a gathering place for discussions about faith and purpose. Lucas shared his story, not as a sermon, but as a genuine testimony of his spiritual journey. Each cup of coffee prepared now carried a deeper meaning, symbolizing welcome and connection. Nature around him seemed to respond to this transformation. The colorful gardens gained more vibrant hues, the river murmured with renewed vigor, and the green hills appeared to embrace the renewal that Lucas represented. His harmony with the environment transcended scientific observation, revealing an almost mystical connection to life. His family, once distant in religious debates, now saw him as an example of reconciliation and love. Family gatherings, previously marked by intellectual tensions, transformed into moments of celebration and unity. Lucas had discovered that true wisdom did not lie in winning arguments, but in understanding and loving. The memory of his mother lingered like a gentle light in his journey. Every action, every act of compassion was a silent tribute to the one who had always believed in his capacity for transformation. In moments of reflection, Lucas felt her presence, not as an absence, but as a continuous inspiration. His transformation was a silent invitation to everyone around him. It was not about converting, but about awakening, to show that spirituality was not a distant concept, but a living force that could reframe entire existences. Lucas had become the living example of how change is possible, how faith can be a path of renewal and purpose. At the end of each day, contemplating the sunset that painted the hills with golden hues, Lucas smiled. He was no longer the solitary and skeptical young man, but a complete human being, connected to his essence and the world around him. His journey from atheist to Christian was more than a personal story. It was a testament of hope and transformation. Lucas's journey reveals that spiritual transformation transcends logical arguments. His story demonstrates how faith can bloom in the most unexpected moments, challenging entrenched convictions. Change does not mean abandoning reason, but expanding the understanding of existence. Every obstacle overcome becomes a testament to renewal, inspiring others to seek meaning beyond the material.